I'm not wearing pants.
So I need to put over there? Pretty confusing to have the rain and it's still a sunny day on a quick day off here. Day off from the main event. Not playing until tomorrow. Day 2 AB is playing right now. I have a couple friends who are in. Yeah, just get ready for tomorrow. My table draw for tomorrow is pretty good. Except for one pretty big player, Andrei Zychenko is going to be 3 to my right. He'll be in the cutoff when I am in the big blind, so it could present some problems if he's going to be pretty aggressive, but we know how to deal with that. Shouldn't be too big of a deal. People to my left should be probably pushovers more than average, but there's only so much you can learn from Hidden Mob. You know, you've got to sometimes just go out there and play. Alright, day 2 of the main. Everyone in the room made it. There's Chris. There's other Chris.
Yeah, I'm wearing a scarf. It's 110.
Yeah, he's well, I am wearing pants at least too. So I feel like
I'm not wearing pants.
I
am wearing pants.
Just had to check there. We all bagged pretty close to starting stack. So I think we should what do you think? Do you think we can all just like triple our stacks today? Triple or more?
Yeah, I'll just stack Johnny Chan.
That's, oh yeah, he's playing with Johnny Chan.
I'm not setting any goals, I'm just trying to play well.
Okay, we're all gonna play well. We're all gonna play well and win chips of an unknown quantity. But I'm gonna triple up. Pretty exciting, pretty big deal, even though I came in with less than starting stack. I was very excited to make it through the day. First time main event, first time making day 2 in the main event. This first hand is played during the first orbit in level 1, so the blinds are 300, 600 with a 100 ante. I have about 45k to start the hand. Open Jack 7 of hearts in the cutoff to 1300. The button is the only caller. We go heads up, the flop is 655 with 2 hearts, so definitely c-betting here. I make it 1400 and he takes a while and calls. We get an above average turn card. It's a 2 of hearts, so get there right away. Obviously I'm going to keep betting here. This time I make it 3100 and again he is taking kind of a while and calls. The river is an offsuit 7, so our hand is still one of the best in our range. Definitely betting for value here. I don't expect him to be holding on with a lot of 6x at this point. I think he's probably more likely got pocket pairs or maybe sometimes trips that he was trying to decide whether or not to raise. That being said, if I bet big here and get raised, I am not excited about it. There are definitely flushes in his range that beat me that he could play this way, and he could have full houses and definitely non-zero portion of the time. If he does raise, we pretty much can't win. That being said, I opt for a sizing of 7,000, and he takes a very long time. Somebody ends up calling the clock on him, and he eventually calls with maybe 20 or 30 seconds left on his time, and my hand is good. So pretty good start to the day. Already probably the best hand that's happened to me the whole tournament, so looks like a good start. This next hand, we are still at the 300, 600 level. I've got about 60k. There's an older guy who's limped a couple of times in early position already. He limps in early position. I make it 1800 with ace-5 of clubs. The button, the small blind, and the limper all call, so we have a very friendly pot going to the flop. The flop is king 8-7 rainbow with one club, and it checks to me. I could go either way here. Most of the time I'm going to check and kind of just be in give up mode, or maybe try to catch some backdoors kind of deal. But I decided to bet 3,300 just because I had so many backdoors and figured I might be able to double barrel somebody off of a hand. It looks really strong when I bet into 3 people like this. Folds around to the limper, and he is the only caller. The turn technically gives us some equity. It's the 5. But I don't think it's that great of a card to continue on when he checks, because we don't really pick up that many outs, and it's not super likely he's going to fold something that he check calls the flop with. In game, I talked myself into barreling because I picked up some equity, and because I thought that he would fold everything except for a king now if I bet again, which might be true, but given that this is an older gentleman, he might not have a whole lot of non-king X when he calls the flop anyway. Tough to know. I do go for a bet of 6,200, and he calls again. Both calls were pretty quick, so at this point, I'm pretty much giving up unless I hit my hand. River's an offsuit 3. He checks, and I check it back as planned. He has king-queen and takes that one down. So right away, pretty much almost back to where I started the day with. In this next hand, I open limp with ace-8 offsuit in the small blind, and big blind checks. The flop comes jack 6-6 with 2 hearts. I decide to check. My opponent now bets 800, and I decide to call. He very well could be betting his whole range here, aside from showdown value, which means that he probably doesn't really have any ace high here. And he likely wouldn't bet some pairs like deuces through 5s. It's possible he would for protection, though. The turn is a deuce, and I check again. He now bets 2,000. And I think it's close. You could definitely fold this hand now. There's better hands I have to continue with. But assuming I bet most jack X on the flop, this is one of the better hands I can have to call down. So I still think he doesn't have ace high. I still think he doesn't have a lot of value bets here. He'll definitely bet jack X. He'll definitely bet 6X. By calling here, I can probably shut his bluffs down for the river. So I can check call now and then check and probably fold on the river if needed. So I call. The river is a pretty interesting card. It's the king of hearts, which brings in the front door flush and obviously puts an overcard on board. I check, and I think pretty much too many hands get there that I was ahead of on a turn to be able to check call here. It's conceivable he could use this card and think of it as a good one to bluff, but I think it's just too often that people will give up here and value bet a king and flushes. But I check, he checks behind, I show my hand, and it's good. I'll take that one down. The guy who I play against in this next hand lost a big pot the previous hand. He's been playing tight, but based on the fact that he just lost a big hand and kind of his demeanor from it, I think it's possible he's steaming at least a little bit. So it kind of influences my pre-flop decision here. Hijack opens to 1,500, which is the standard opening size at this blind level. And I'm in the cutoff, and I decided to just call with king 10 offsuit. I think you could make a case for 3-betting, but I decided to call and just kind of keep the pot a little bit smaller with position and thinking he might be opening a little wide here. I figure I can take advantage and probably take the pot down later. The big blind calls as well, which is probably one reason why it might be a little bit better to 3-bet than call, but we end up going 3 ways to the flop. It's queen jack 3 rainbow. The big blind checks. The hijack puts out a c-bet of 2,500. I decide to just call, thinking I can probably make a little bit more if the turn comes a brick and, he either bets or checks. I can take it down most likely. Big blind folds and we go heads up to a turn. The turn's an offsuit 10, which is interesting because I do pick up a pair. I don't think it really changes the value of my hand too much, but it does improve ace king, which is unfortunate. It does improve stuff like queen 10 and jack 10. So I'm not actually loving the card, even though I technically improve. He likes to check though, and I decide to check behind. The river's a 6, and he now bets 4,000. I'm laughing because it's a very awkward spot. I had a little bit of showdown value, I felt, when he checked the turn. But now when he bets the river, it kind of makes it impossible for him to have hands like pocket nines through pocket sevens. So I don't think there's a whole lot I'm beating aside from like really pure air bluffs. So it's like ace nine. I don't know. It's like it's really hard to put hands he would bet like this. In the moment, I made a bit of a crying call, which I think is bad. He also ended up with a hand that I really didn't expect, which made me feel a little bit worse about it. He had pocket kings. So the whole like him steaming thing and me wanting to take it down kind of went out of the window with that one. Sometimes your read is wrong. Sometimes people play into that image of looking like they're steaming very well. And that's kind of what happened here. I still think the river is bad even with my assumptions about him steaming. I just don't think he's going to have enough bluffs once he seemingly gives up on the turn. Still, though, I would have taken an ace or a 9 for the dirty chop. That would have been okay with me. Or a 10. 10 would have been cool, too. In this next hand, I open the small blind to 1600 with king-queen. Big blind calls me, go heads up. The flop is ace-6 deuce rainbow, and I check. The turn is the deuce of spades. I check, and he now bets 3,000. Which I thought was very weird for a couple reasons. Most people are not going to check a lot of value hands on the flop. They're not going to check a ton of pure bluffs either, but they might check something with showdown value like queen jack, king jack. It's a little bit weird for him to bet the turn, but it is the second spade on board, so it's possible that he picked up equity and just decides to bet now. I still expect my hand to be good a pretty high percentage of the time, so I call. The other thing is that his sizing is very big. It makes me a little bit suspicious that he's just really trying hard to take it down. So I just kind of click the call button. The river's an offsuit 8 and I check. He now bets 6,000 and this is a pretty awkward spot. We're now getting to the point where this is a reasonable portion of my stack, but it's still really not adding up for me. It's possible he could check back an ace on the flop, but it's kind of hard to give him really any value hands aside from like gigantic stuff like sets where he feels comfortable checking the flop and then just betting turn and river. There are missed flush draws. There's other random bluffs he could have. So I, again, kind of just close my eyes and click the call button here. I think it's pretty defensible and he doesn't represent a lot of value hands, so I just go ahead and call. He says my hand is good, so I turn it over and he mucks. He was definitely frustrated by this. It's the second time blind versus blind that I was kind of on the correct end of a call against him. This guy told me after the fact that he's actually a vlog viewer. So shout out to him. It was fun playing with you and meeting you. Normally I don't love the idea of just like battling with vlog viewers in the main event, but it was definitely fun getting to play with you. This next hand is played against Zaichenko, and he has been pretty straightforward actually. There was one hand where I 3-bet him and he 4-bet me, but it was the first hand I'd 3-bet. I had a fairly tight image at the time, so I don't think he was 4-betting me light. I don't have reason to think he's like really getting out of line at all, actually. In this hand, Zaichenko opens the cutoff to 1,800, which is kind of the standard sizing now. We are now at 400, 800. The old guy who's been limping a lot flats the button, and I am in the big blind with queen 9 of clubs, and I call. The flop is ace 9-5 rainbow, and it actually ends up checking through. The turn is the very welcome queen of hearts, and I go ahead and lead for 2,500. Zaichenko calls the 2,500, which is pretty interesting to me. I think it's likely he has a queen or maybe something like pocket kings. So king, queen, pocket kings, maybe a light call of pocket jacks here. Those are his most likely holdings. He could potentially have a weak ace and check back the flop, trying to get more value on turn and river as well. The older gentleman on the button now makes it 5,000, which is a stone min raise, and the action's back on me. I think this is a pretty weird spot. If I re-raise, it kind of really announces the strength of my hand. There is a backdoor flush draw that's possible, so it's maybe conceivable that someone could put me on a draw, but I think that's very unlikely. The old guy could probably have ace-9 or ace-queen here and conceivably check back the flop like this. He could also check back some other ace-x on the flop and just raise on this turn because he's worried about the draws, and he doesn't really think that I have a strong hand necessarily when I lead like this. So there's definitely some merit to re-raising. I end up just deciding to call though because I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen if I raise. Flatting also allows Zaichenko to continue. I call, Zaichenko also calls, and the river, again, it's a pretty good card. The river's the 9 of spades. Now, I do have a decision here between betting and checking. I think leading here is like a little bit face up. It looks like I have a 9. Even though it's kind of hard for me to continue with a 9, and probably unlikely I would even lead just a bare 9 on the turn. But I also feel like leading here just shows strength a ton of the time, so I ended up checking. In retrospect, I think it's a little too likely to get checked through based on people's likely holdings. So I should probably just go for the lead. But I check, it checks through, and I show down the winner. In this next hand, a tight player opens early position to 1700. Middle position calls, and I'm in the small blind with black, king, queen, and I also call. The big blind comes along as well, and we go 4 ways to a flop. Flop is queen 4-3 with 2 diamonds. It checks to early position, and he quickly c-bets 2300. It folds to me, and I just make the call. The turn is the 6 of diamonds, which completes the front door flush draw. I check, and he checks it back. So at this point, I'm expecting my hand to be good, basically 100% of the time. It's possible he'd check back ace queen or an overpair, but I think it's unlikely. And there's just not really any other hands I lose to. There's a bunch of stuff I beat. The river's now the 5 of hearts, and I check. He bets 4,000, which is a little bit awkward just because I think it looks like I have showdown value, and it looks like I'm probably going to call. But given that I took this line so that I could just check call, I go ahead and toss it in. And unfortunately, he has the pretty unexpected ace-deuce of hearts. This is not a play I would have seen him make prior. He did not open this wide in early position prior. He was probably not even really c-betting this much before. So it was very weird. The whole hand was very weird. So it's pretty unfortunate that this hand went down. Obviously lost a decent chunk, and thought my hand was going to be good. So lose that one, and on to the next hand. This next hand, Zaichenko opens the cutoff to 2,000. Folds around to me, and I'm in the big blind with ace-8 suited. Now, I think most of the time I'd be 3-betting this, but given that it plays pretty well, especially since it's suited, I can see some showdowns. He hasn't been playing crazy, but he has 4-bet me once, and I folded. I think there's more value to flatting here than 3-betting against him. I go ahead and flat. We catch yet another above average outcome. It's ace-10-8 two-tone. I check. Zaichenko bets 2,500. I make it 8,000, and he actually calls pretty quickly. So this is a pretty good scenario so far. The turn, unfortunately, is, I think, one of the worst cards in the deck that is not a diamond, and not a 10, I guess. It's a queen. So there's a lot of hands that now beat us that we were ahead of, that he would have continued against our check raise with. Things like ace-queen, things like jack-9. Even stuff like king-jack, he might peel one and try to make a play later on. So definitely not excited about it, but stack sizes kind of dictate the action in this hand. I have 2 options, really. I have 25k behind or so, and I could bet very small. I could bet like 8,000 again, and I guess fold to a jam, but that seems so hard to do in reality, like in practice, in game, that it seems like it's probably a bad plan, at least for me. Maybe some people are capable of doing it, just bet 8k and fold for the 17k more, but I'm not sure I would have been able to in that moment, so I don't think that's the best line. Instead, I just jammed. It's a little bit more than pot, but I think that it's fine to do. He can still have ace-king, ace-jack, and there's so many flush draws as well. That are many of them that are now combo draws or pick up a pair, that it seems like we get a lot of value, even if he doesn't call, just from protecting our equity. So I jam, I get insta-called. He has the good old jack-9 off, and we're looking for some help here. He covers me by a lot, so I am at risk. I've got a few outs, just 4 to be exact. I can hit any ace or any 8. The river pairs the board, but it's not the one we needed. It's 10, and that's it. That's my main event. I had mixed feelings about making this video. so far after the fact, so removed from actually playing the hands. I like to make them a lot closer to when I play the hands because it means my mindset and my thought process is a little more fresh in terms of what I was thinking in game. But it was hard to make this video. It was hard to make the first video. They say that the day you get knocked out of the main event is the worst day of the year. And I will say that at my previous job, I had some pretty bad days, but it certainly compares. It was definitely not one of the best days of my year. Busting the main event is hard to describe if you've never played it because it's a tournament that's unlike any other. In a lot of ways, mechanically, it's the same. In a lot of ways, strategically, it's very similar. But the buzz, the excitement, kind of the anticipation and the expectation of doing well, those are all much more heightened in the main event. And the fact that it was the biggest tournament I've ever played by pretty much a factor of 3 definitely also plays in terms of disappointment. I will say that I didn't play my best poker. There were definitely mistakes I made, especially on day 1, a little bit less so on day 2, but I'm pretty pleased with how I performed overall, especially because I got to a point on day 1 where I could have easily had a blow up. I could have easily, just decided to punt basically because my stack was down very, very far, very early. So overall, I guess you could say I'm pleased with how I performed given the situations I was put in. But that being said, even as I am able to kind of shrug this off now, smile about it, laugh about some of my mistakes, and get excited about next year, there's definitely still that feeling in my gut, that kind of raw, just visceral reaction of displeasure at how it went and busting. So not exactly the most uplifting end to the summer. I haven't played any poker since the main event, really. And, I'm kind of glad to be taking a little bit of a break. Diving more into School of Cards stuff, which has been good. You can be looking for some fun updates there soon. Not much else to say. I just need to kind of power up, power through. So I'll see you guys on the other side.